Empire. How we move can not only improve performance, but give context.
We have great information on our athletes, from where they ended the season before, where they started that particular season, and how they're ramping up. And then if somebody unfortunately comes down with an injury, now you have data that can show where I was.
That's Jim Garofalo, Executive Vice President at Kinexon Sports and Media, where tracking is heading into its 2.0. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. Jim Garofalo was on the show back in March of 2021. This is episode 256 of Future Sport. It's not a milestone, but it's worth a mention of our dedication and longevity in the sports and tech space. And tell you, we're having previous guests on when things have truly changed. And for Kinexon, the power and avenues for tracking of players has grown immensely. Our guest this week is Jim Garofalo. He's the Executive Vice President at Kinexon Sports and Media. Kinexon, which is one of the leaders in sports tracking and analytics, and they've had a lot happening since we last spoke to you, Jim. Thanks for coming back on today. I appreciate it.
And Bram, great to see you and talk to you again.
Let's just do a quick overview again for those who don't remember exactly what you guys do. Give us the overview of what Kinexon does.
Yeah, Kinexon is a company that works in the athlete tracking space. So we are a company that can put wearable technology on our players and teams that we work with and be able to deliver performance metrics to the strength and conditioning coach, the sports science staff, and really help athletes, in all aspects of their training and workload management. So we work with, teams across the NBA, college basketball, college football, NFL, NHL, now have made some forays into Major League Baseball as well. So we're able to provide, insights and analytics that will help athletes kind of train and stay in peak performance, but also make sure that they're, managing those workloads accordingly over the course of the season here, as we know that those practices and seasons games can add up over the course of the year. So making sure that they manage accordingly as they go through.
Obviously, you guys have broad reach now. Can you kind of just take me step by step through acceptance of it, wanting to do it, worries about privacy? Can you kind of take me through those issues to get to where we are now, which is how deeply embedded in sports Kinexon is?
Yeah, I think, over the last few years, we've seen kind of an explosion in the space. And really, as the demands of these athletes continues to go year round, right? There's really no such thing as an off season anymore. And I think as athletes are preparing for the upcoming season or kind of in season, they need tools and, objective information to help them, prepare accordingly. So, we've been kind of at the forefront of that from day one. And I think initially when you start to go through, athletes, are looking at this and they're like, how is this information going to be used? And is it going to be used, for the betterment of me or, against me here? Yeah. And I think as you start to go into it, you start to see that they understand that, this information is here to help. It's not here to be used, to evaluate, should I sign a guy? Should I not sign a guy? I think it's really, the teams that are utilizing it now are using it in the right way to really help, deliver that extra level of insight for them. Obviously, they want to make sure that their athletes are performing at their best, and they need all the tools and whether that be in the weight room, in the athletic training room, on the court, they want to make sure that they're providing the best tools possible to do that for them. So, we've come up with a solution here that is seamless for them. It's a very small, kind of wearable device that they can, many of them don't even realize they have on, right? They can wear it in their waistband or, some of them you've probably seen between the shoulder blades, and it delivers that information to the performance staff in real time. So they're able to look at that in training, in competition, and make, in the moment judgment of, hey, we need to ramp a guy up towards the end of practice, or we need to ramp a guy down just to be able to do that. And it all consolidates that information together. And then, from a data privacy perspective, all of our information, obviously with the teams we work with and where we play, has to be protected and safeguarded. So, the individual athletes, have access to their data through the teams. The team, sports science or strength and conditioning staff would have access to it as well. So we take those things seriously, and we make sure that that data is only used for those individual teams. And, we're not having, wide open networks where people are able to access other people's data. It's very secure, and most of them have servers that live on site at the individual teams that we work with.
I imagine that every team uses the information a little bit differently, but broadly, what have you seen in terms of changes with how people train based on the advent of using these type of products?
Yeah, I think we've seen some great advances. Where we see probably the most usage during a season. I mean, when you get into a season, something like the NBA, where they have so many games in such a short period of time, and the travel demands here, you may not see it as much on guys that are playing on a regular basis. But where you really can see benefit here is if you've got some guys that maybe that fourth, fifth guy that's off the bench and isn't getting a lot of playing time over the course of a couple games in a row. Now you have tools that you can look at. Hey, what does a game workload normally look like for him, or what are the type of distances and speeds that he's getting up to in a game environment? Now I can go and tailor my practice and make sure that I'm getting him up to those levels during the course of a week. So if I've got a couple of games where I may not get as many minutes as I'm used to, now you have a way to objectively go in there and say, hey, I need to get up to these levels to make sure that I can, that when I do get called in, that I'm ready to go. So we've seen it adjust, those type of environments. A lot of times too with return to play. We have great information on our athletes, from where they ended the season before, where they started that particular season, and how they're ramping up. And then if somebody unfortunately comes down with an injury, now you have data that can show where I was, where I am, and where I need to get to kind of get back into that ready to play mode. So we've seen it in those environments pretty heavily. You start to look at the sport of football and how many, high end accelerations are guys running on a day in and day out basis. If they're doing those type of things on a Thursday before a Saturday game at the collegiate level, those are things they probably want to pay attention to. So now they've been able to start to look at this data through those lenses to help. Maybe they're not going to change practice. Their coaches are not going to change practices based off of this stuff, but I think they're going to be more mindful of those type of things as they move forward.
The other side of it too is load management has become not only just a very real thing, but something that has kind of altered, I think, the way even Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has mentioned they need to think through scheduling based on this data and information that they now know about the players. It feels like in some ways the players have been empowered by understanding their bodies better. The teams are empowered by trying to get the best out of the players. And sometimes that means the schedule's too rigorous on them. So I think we're seeing a lot of structural changes that are happening.
Yeah, I think this can, when you start to have consistent information that's coming through all the teams and being able to do this, now you can start to consolidate that information and see, what are the impacts that our ramp up has and our preseason schedule has on guys, or like back-to-back nights, what that starts to do. I mean, if you look in the world of hockey and basketball, I mean, their schedules are intense. I mean, and most of them are playing or practicing every single day. So like, how do you appropriately, kind of give those guys the right amount of time off, or not pushing them as hard at certain instances as the year goes on. So I think that as these things evolve, you're going to see leagues start to look more and more at this data. And, is it going to be giving insights about injuries that may be occurring from overuse or things of that nature? So I think that we're just starting to scratch the surface here of how leagues and how teams can start to prepare, in season and then for upcoming seasons as well.
Okay. So since last we spoke, it's probably been a year or two. There's now just kind of a mountain of data that keeps coming in off of the teams that have used it for a few years now. What's changed for them? What are they asking you for to alter? What more do they want to know about their players?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we work with some great data scientists and great professionals on the team level that really have built programming based off of this information. So I think for us, it's continuing to make sure that we're we're validating what we're doing and making sure that we're giving them the most accurate information out there and pushing that piece of it forward. Also looking at new areas to evolve our metrics, right? Like I think each year we go and we do a dive on, what we've seen over the past year, look at some of the data quality and what it's showing, and what are new ways to look at it. What are the new visualizations that you can do, or kind of putting different metrics together from feedback we've heard from teams. So I think everybody looks at it a little bit differently. And I think now you have so many teams that have been using it for so long. They've got really good, catalogs of information on their guys. I think where now we come into play is when we start to work with teams that maybe guys are, have been traded to or have signed in new locations. And, with some of the game data that we work with, we're able to go in and showcase, hey, here's what some of the metrics look like from a game data perspective for a lot of these teams we're working with. So we can add value.
So you are helping teams understand a newly acquired player quicker than maybe they would have in the past.
We can. Yeah. I mean, they have amazing scouts and everybody that can look at it from a on-court perspective, but we also have the ability to give guys information on, from some of these, some of this reporting here that we've done. And, we have some game data tools from a league-wide perspective that can give some insights. Now, it's easy. It's accessible information for these guys. So it's not hard to pull up, and some teams will use that. Some are like, hey, we train completely different than they did there, so it's not as important. But we do have the ability to kind of go in and give them some baseline information if they ask for it.
How much of what you are providing could translate to broadcast, and how much is being utilized that way at this point?
We everything that we translate, I think everything we deliver from our systems that we work with in the NBA and kind of our wired solution that is giving information in real time with a very low latency, all that information could be translated into broadcast if we wanted to, whether it be speeds, accelerations, jump heights, change, just patterns on court. We can deliver all that type of information in real time to impact broadcast. We actually did it last year with our friends at the WNBA around the Commissioner's Cup, and had some in-game they did a Commissioner's Cup final was in Phoenix last year. And we actually had in-game monitoring going for the first time for the W, and was able to deliver metrics, to broadcasts that were coming through there. So we have the ability to do that in a variety of sports. I think we probably had the most success with it to this point in Europe. We have a very strong relationship with the EHF, the European Handball Federation. So every game that is played within that league, and then the championships, all the athletes have sensors on. We actually have sensor technology in the ball, so you can get ball speed and some of those metrics as well. And all those are pulled into broadcast there. So we have our system is built in a way that we can tie directly into broadcast. And then you just have your broadcast partners that can build, kind of tables or graphs that would show up in game to really deliver an extra layer of information to the fan experience. Is
it real time too? Is it possible that you could show Tyreek Hill getting up to a certain speed in real time?
You can, we have the latency on it is within a couple of milliseconds that it can deliver through. So with the TV delay, you absolutely could do that in real time there. You've seen some great examples of it. I mean, the NHL does a good job with it currently and bringing some of those pieces to life. We're hopeful that we get some opportunities here in the not too distant future to help bring that to life in other sports as well, in other leagues as well. So, the way it's built, and it's really sharp to be able to deliver that in real time. Not only can you impact stuff from a performance side of it, but also from a fan engagement piece that you can do that as well.
All right. Meantime, last time we spoke, and you guys have been leaders in controlled environments like indoor courts, NBA, college basketball. I know you've moved into football, and I do wonder what has been the growth model of trying to get the same information, but in a less controlled environment like an outdoor space.
Yeah, we've played in the global football space for a bit now with our work in Germany and in the EU from a global soccer perspective as well. Have a couple of NFL teams here that we've worked with for a number of years. But really for us, we know that the college landscape to evolve there, with the amount of colleges that are out there and the environments they're in, we had to go into the GPS space. And we feel that that's an area that we can target and go after pretty heavily. We launched a GPS product about a year ago, about a little over 16, 17 months ago, that we launched a GPS product, and we've had great success. I think the space itself is one that has gotten pretty mature over the last few years. There's some significant players in the space that obviously we have to compete with here, but I think the approach that we took and the type of product that we brought gives us a great opportunity to have some success there. And I think we know that if you're going to grow in the NFL and in the college landscape, a lot of these universities are looking for solutions that can, solve a college football, solve a problem for college football, but also for basketball and volleyball and other, and soccer and other sports there. So we felt that for us to continue to compete at the collegiate level, we needed an offering that could have an outdoor solve, an indoor solve, and then be someone that could be positioned, across these school-wide opportunities that really could deliver, really, really sound and really accurate tracking data in a variety of environments.
Do you see any opportunity with team sports at a lower level than the collegiate level, whether it be athletes who are attempting to get scholarships or be found? Is it useful for high school teams, for club teams? What have you seen in that marketplace?
Yeah, it's certainly a market that has a ton of potential. I mean, as the father of teenage girls that played club soccer and other club sports, like you certainly see the amount of money that's being invested in these sports across a variety of levels, whether it be basketball, football, soccer. So there's certainly opportunity there. I think for us, it's coming up with the right model, because you don't want to just roll out something that's going to give them information, but not give them the tools to help interpret what it means, right? Because it's great to be able to go and say, hey, I was getting up to this speed or doing this workload, but what does that mean in the environment they're in? I think that's the gap that a lot of us have to try to close to be able to really penetrate that market, because you can give, we all have we have the tools to be able to deliver that information to the youth market. I think where the gap is how do you give them that information and then make it meaningful and useful in a language that they're going to understand. They unfortunately don't have the access to a sports science or a strength and conditioning coach and that's going to be able to interpret that. So you have to really make it a simple format that's going to be understandable and that they can look at over the period of time. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think we have an eye towards that, but for right now we're laser focused on the college space and, obviously our pro growth as well. But we want to make sure that we've got the team and collegiate landscape nailed really well before we start to delve into that space. But we do see opportunity there. I think it's what the right offering is, and then how you support that network to make them understandable and kind of move through as well.
Okay. Last one. And I want to go back to media for a moment. And some of this type of information is being used. Next Gen Stats doing a great job with some of the stuff that they're using and utilizing within NFL games. As you kind of move forward here, obviously you can't speak for what the broadcast partners want, but when you talk to them about what you can incorporate, what is piquing their interest in terms of how we may view a broadcast differently with the use of data analytics?
Yeah, I think we've seen a massive shift in how consumers are kind of consuming. Sorry, consumers are consuming, or how they're grabbing that information. They're watching games on TV, but they're also watching on a smartphone or a tablet. And I think having additional benefits in those areas or adding additional context to those type of things is kind of the wave of the future here. So I can click in a little bit deeper on how much distance has my guy covered, or what kind of speed is there. I really think that we're just scratching the surface on that. You referenced a great one. I think Next Gen does a great job of bringing those to life, and I think it's a great model for a lot of where the future can go on this. I think it's all about fan engagement. They want to give fans a deeper look at of what they can what their athletes are doing and what's going on in that game environment versus just the score on the score of the game going on. So I think there's a real opportunity there. I think also too, with the evolution of fantasy and all those things, like people are looking for all different kinds of insights that they can analyze what their players are doing. I would imagine there's people that are, super deep into these different statistics and looking on back-to-back games and distances covered or whatever that might be. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there for it to be leveraged in the right way in those spaces as well.
Yep. Jim Garofalo is the Executive Vice President at Kinexon in Sports and Media. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. It's always fun to talk to you.
On the next Future Sport podcast, AI can transform a live event.
You are in the real world. You are in the physical space. Now, can we bring in more information so you're in an augmented real world? So if I have glasses on, I put on my glasses and I have information that is important for me, that's personalized to me, that is overlaid with the real physical world around me.
That's Dr. Jay Jairam, co-founder of Kintar. He'll describe the near alternate universe you can enter when attending a PGA event. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.